Hi, and welcome to Soulful Conversations. I have author Shellie Enteen, who is going to talk to us today about her most recent book that is currently launching. Shellie is a healer, she's an aromatherapist, of course, she's an author, and many, many more things. The coolest thing that I discovered while talking with Shellie is she's a true wise woman. And we definitely need to have more wise women in our community. And what I mean by that is she has the ability to take our ancient wisdom and turn it into these magnificent books for us to read. The thing that I'm really excited about is that she's done this trilogy on Priestess and actually the training. So without further ado, I am going to turn it over to Shellie so that you can tell us a little bit more about the book that you're launching. I'd also love to know how this all came about, and I'm sure the people listening are also incredibly interested about not only what is a priestess, how to become one, and maybe some of the things you can do for yourself to develop that area of yourself, but most importantly, how does that convey in today's world? So I know that's a lot to unpack. So
It is.
I'm going to hide myself so that
Oh, okay.
you get the full view.
Full view of me. Okay.
Yes. So
I'm happy to tell you all of that.
excellent. Okay, the floor is yours, Shellie.
Okay. Well, to speak to how it happened, I mean, I've led an unusual life that came in without me asking for things. So one of the radical departures in the 1970s was studying astrology. And these things came, I wasn't looking for it. So there's a story about everything that I accrued in my life that wasn't a plan, but ended up being who I was. And essentially, in a way, I had become a priestess in, using essential oils and teaching them to others and doing body work and Reiki and all of that. However, what I never looked at, I looked at a lot of things, Tibetan, and, I was doing meditation work, and I was studying with Native Americans, getting a lot of wisdom from them, but I never wanted to investigate the Celtic background. I guess I believed the PR. They were pagans, they were evil. And most of the stories that you read, and I've read and seen everything, I've read Mists of Avalon and, stories about Arthur, Merlin, they are portrayed, the priestesses specifically. Merlin, they accept for some reason as a wizard, but they portray the women negatively, particularly the priestesses.
Like
And
Morgan Le Fay.
yeah, she
Yeah,
does a lot of things, even in Mists of Avalon, even the idea of her seducing her brother,
right.
it's a little bit off. And I felt at the end when she became a nun, it was a little bit off, but it was 1980 and the church was still very powerful, and they could have banned the book for their
Oh,
congregations.
I didn't even think about that.
They were
Is
still doing that. Well, the reason I think about it is because it didn't feel right to me for some reason. Now I know the reason. But when I was writing these books, I was just bringing them in. I was on a train in England, and the whole story is in the author's note in book one, so I won't go through it all now. But I was coming back from Glastonbury to London, where I had gone to do an evolutionary astrology workshop with Jeffrey Wolf Green, who was the creator of it, and he was phenomenal. And I had found out actually that I was going to have to come back in December. And I've lived in England. I wasn't really keen on that, but we had part two. And I knew I was going to come back. And I was visiting a new friend in Glastonbury. So I'm coming into this train, and there's only one seat left. And that's across from a woman who's very busy chatting to these fellows that were already there. If you are ever on a train in England, some of them have like a table between two benches, sort of, that are facing each other. You might have seen those in movies and television programs. So there I am, and I'm just taking my journal out to start writing. And she turns to me and says, "Where did you come from, Glastonbury?" And she starts talking to me. And because of the conversation, she said to me at one point, "Well, Mists of Avalon did a lot to get Morgan Le Fay to be a human, to humanize the priestesses." And then she started pointing at my chest like this. And she said, "Someday someone is going to tell the story of Nimue, and then the truth will be told." And she said Arthur was in Wales. Now, Wales, Wales, for those of you who saw the fish, Wales is not a place anyone was thinking about. I wasn't thinking about it. I've been living in England for 2 years. I met one Welsh person, and, they sort of, the English downplayed the Welsh.
Right.
I really had no idea, even at the time, that I had a Welsh family lineage through my father's grandmother on his mother's side. Nobody ever told me. So how would I know? You know? So that comes in later, but there she is pointing at me, and I'm like, I can't think of writing about this Nimue. She's really evil. She's traps Merlin in tunnels and seduces him and gets a list. Well, I did hear her tell me something that hooked me, and that's what they were trying to do. And what it was that I should go to Caerleon in Wales, which is where Arthur's fortress was. I never heard of it before. And that there's a pub there. And you should go to the pub where Alfred Lord Tennyson, now I was an English lit major, and
Right.
Alfred Lord Tennyson wrote The Lady of Shalott. And The Lady of Shalott was turned into a beautiful song by Lorena McKennitt. And I had been listening to that album, and that was my favorite song on the album. So she gave me that thought. And when I was coming back, it was going to be my birthday when the class was over, and I was going back out to Glastonbury. So I said to my friend, "Can I go there for my birthday? Can we go to the pub in Caerleon?" And it's very close, just over the bridge from Bristol, not very far from where she was. And so when I got there, I was literally in the hologram. If you don't know what a hologram is, it's like everything is still there that was ever there, kinds of
Wow.
thing. And so there are the ruins of this, one of the largest Roman fortresses that they had in the United Kingdom was at Caerleon. And so you see the ruins of it. And it was a cold and a windy day, but something happened. It came in somehow. Because in January back in Florida, I picked up a pen because it was like early days for Microsoft Word. I
Right.
picked up a pen and I started writing, and I waited to see what she would say. And if you want, I can read what she would say.
I would love to hear it. And I'm
And
also curious, were you doing, some of us think that's automatic writing, where you just sit down and write what you
I,
hear.
okay, I'll tell you what I was doing. And in Welsh tradition, they have a word, Awen, Awen, and that is the cauldron of inspiration. And what had happened for me, I was a writer also. And this woman didn't know that. Mostly I was writing articles and things at that point, but an aromatherapy articles, as a matter of fact. But I started getting downloaded with poetry. Rhiannon's Dance is a long bardic rhyming poem, and I didn't know, I only knew Stevie Nicks' Rhiannon. I didn't know it was a Welsh goddess.
Right.
Later, when I studied a little bit after I was writing the books were already written, and I studied with a Welsh professor. at Celtic Source. You can find him on Facebook. And I heard the whole myth of Rhiannon, and images that are in the poem were related to her.
Wow.
So the Anwen is the cauldron of inspiration. And so I would say that what started happening to me to sort of prepare me to do this was the downloading of the poems. There's one, Morgana's Lament, which is another one, and one about the Selkie, these rhyming bardic poems. And
Mhm.
they're very powerful. When I first moved to South Carolina, I did a lot of reading, poetry readings, and people would get very moved by them. So I never called it automatic writing, but yes, I think it's inspired writing. I never knew what she was where she would go and what she was going to say until I was writing it down. And there are many things in the books that surprised me. And I will say right now, the connection to healing is the fact that what we're going to go through with her as a priestess is all of her training. In book 2, she's on the Priestess Isle, and she's being trained by both the head of the Priestess Isle and some otherworldly guides. And it's fascinating how much I learned. I mean, I had been doing a lot of things. I mean, I'm, in the area of all of these things like studying elements and chakras and, I've been doing all of that for so long, but I did not have these pieces. These pieces were ancestral, and they were lost to us because we were taken away from what we could do, our
That
power.
is that is so amazing, Shellie. Is that where you began to like develop like and learn the Druid philosophies?
Oh, yes.
And is that how the practice evolved?
Okay, so let's say Druid philosophy has to be discussed in a manner of speaking, because one of the things that this is set in Wales in the late 400s. We used to call it AD, now they're calling it CE, right? So um, the Romans have been there
Mhm.
occupying. And in a little less than 100 years from when Anwen is born, and that's the name of the priestess, um, they have had to go away altogether. They have withdrawn completely, the armies and the magistrates. So they're gone now. And one of the things that they tried to do was to stamp out the Druid practice and presence, because the Druid priests were it's not like the priests now. You hear the word priest and you have to completely change your mind about what a priest is in terms of religions today. They were extremely learned, and they were teachers, not
Mhm.
just for the royal family, but they would sometimes be in the area and give teachings to the children. And they were consulted in matters of law and things like that. So they were extremely influential. They were your go-to elders for, pretty much everything. And the priestess, female and male, were equal but different.
Right.
Um, the priestesses had a lot of the wisdom also given to them, but they were specialized in the healing techniques. Not that the priests didn't know how, and you'll understand that even more after you read the books, but that the women were the ones you would call on. And that was a tradition that stayed, although the women healers didn't call themselves priestesses anymore. So the Druids, I think, were like incredibly brilliant, because when the church started coming in, they allowed them to have a Celtic church for a while. And I mean, literally allowed it. So they were able to keep their practices and their festivals going and all of this. And some of the festivals we have now are taken from theirs and
Right.
their Celtic calendar of the seasons. Yes. One of the things we lost was the word midwinter and midsummer and when the actual seasons begin, because, the solstice is in December is midwinter. So it's not the beginning of winter.
Oh,
It's
that's
the
so
middle of,
interesting.
yes, exactly. You see? And that's what happened to me. I went, whoa, this is big. And it's very hard to make people understand what it was like to be an agricultural society
Mm.
that was not considering itself separate or better than any of the other things in creation around them. And that truly their worship of a goddess was actually the honoring of the manifestations, all the manifestations, and at the different times, because they were completely interconnected. Like the thing that we're trying to get back to, it's something that they were in, and it's hard to understand. They did a lot of oral transmission.
Hmm.
And one of the reasons that they left nothing, so they call it the Celtic Dark Age for the Wales people, the Druids left no written because they knew that it would be distorted. And that if it was distorted by the church, I mean, you had an Aramaic language converted to Greek, which couldn't exactly translate, converted to different languages,
Right.
and then taken and shifted, and we'll put this in, but we'll leave that out. They were aware of this potential. So I'll read the beginning of the book, and it'll be said by the character.
Okay,
Right?
great. Thank you so much, Shellie.
So there are 3 books, and the last priestess, and I only have my proof copy here, but maybe you can see her. She's
Okay,
very beautiful.
beautiful.
Her name actually means great beauty. That's why I had to have a beautiful. All right, chapter 1 is called Returning, and she's speaking from what the Welsh would call the other world.
Got it.
Okay. I am Nimue, or so the storytellers call me, unless I am Vivienne, the Lady of the Lake, or some other name of their own device. Of these false names, I prefer Nimue as it speaks of memory, and this is where I dwell. In memories of an age they cannot truly capture, but which I know well. In one of their tales, I am a beautiful young girl who seduced an aged Merlin, intent on learning his secret powers. I use his knowledge to trap him in a wind tunnel he can never escape. No one seems to wonder why I would do such a thing. My cruel behavior was easily accepted by an audience certain that I, a pagan priestess of the old ways, would always act from instinctive evil. Eventually, all the stories spun a web so tight around me that truly it is I who have dwelled, trapped in tunnels of distortion, unable to speak out against the false depictions of me and my priestess sisters, which is where I went, or those of wise Merlin. Even idealized portrayals of Arthur do not reveal the truth of how he became a beloved leader of men and successful protector of the land. In truth, I was the last priestess called to join the Circle of Nine, who served the great mother goddess Modron on the Priestess Isle off the west coast of Wales. It was near the end of the 5th century AD, a time of great challenge and change for the Druids and the people who followed our ways. We knew our voices would soon be gone, lost in the mist of misconceptions. But the Druid wise ones had the power to see far into the future. In the 1st century AD, the Roman armies moved north, intending to eradicate the Druid influence on the people. When they massacred our priests on the island of Anglesey, it signaled the time for those who escaped to set in motion a secret plan. It was the only way to succeed in preserving the purity of our knowledge, and it would take centuries to perfect. When it was time to put the final pieces of this plan in place, I was one who would play a crucial role in ensuring its success. The wise ones also knew that long after our presence faded, interest in the legendary warrior Arthur and the wizard Merlin would remain. They appeared in folk tales and memories passed down through the generations to come. On the way, more and more of the original story was lost, but even the fabricated tales written later by Christian monks, that's an important piece, would serve to keep us alive in the minds of generations to come. Patiently, I have waited while the centuries unfolded exactly as my Lady Sisters and the Druid Priests had foretold. My own story has the power to change beliefs and empower potentials, but the veil over truth became so thick that had I tried to speak, my words would have ricocheted off dense walls of fear or been buried in the quicksand of despair. And so this tale has been kept carefully cloaked in silence, along with other truths about our time, sacred sites, and ways. We knew the time of silence and hiding would end, and we watched from the other world, looking for signs that would indicate a long Earth cycle had finished and a new cycle had begun. Finally, this was seen in the birth of those unwilling to be bruised by centuries of lies. With eager hearts and minds, they seek the hidden truth. And for this purpose, I have come now to part the veil between our worlds. I will reveal my name and tell my story. You will know it is true, for it is your own, a memory reawakening within the crystals of your bones.
Wow.
And when you get to the end of book 3, you've got it all. And everything makes total sense to you. And it is book 2, which is, this is the cover. This is not the proof copy. Priestess of the Realms.
Oh, that's beautiful also. Wow.
Where she is getting her full training. And then it is book 3, where she uses all of that training. And this is the one that launches, that's really up there now on Amazon, but it just launched this week, Priestess of the Prophecy. So she is now learning what her part is.
So as I read your work, is there a way for me to apply what it is I'm reading, or is it?
Absolutely. In fact, what people have told me, and if you go on Amazon, you can see some of the reviews. I didn't get as many reviews come up yet for the second book. A lot of people got the first book. You'll see the reviews in that. But people have told me that they're using it as a training. The reviews for book 2 will tell you that people will have this on their shelf to refer to. And I myself, as an astrologer in that part of my practice, and also in the Oriental medicine practices that I have used, the Jinshin Jitsu instead of acupuncture, Japanese, and even how I practice subtle aromatherapy, I have been around the realm of elements before. I had never seen them the way I know them now. And every time I read these books again, which I've had to do because of revising and, everything.
Right.
And also wanting to, while I was waiting for the third book, I went back and I read the book 1 and book 2. You just keep getting more. You keep getting deeper insights into these things, and there are tools. I would say in general, not completely, but in general, the priestess, Lady Gwendolen is the name of the priestess. You meet her in book 1. She gives Anwen her first initiation at a Samhain ceremony, which they didn't call those names, so not in the book. And I explain that we don't know the words they used. We don't know the words for the goddesses they had. They left nothing. Okay,
Wow.
literally. Lady Gwendolen, at the head of the circle of 9, that's what they used to have with 9 priestesses. She gives a lot of the practical tools. You do this with that. She gets a belt even with some tools on it. And it's
Mhm.
explained when she first arrives in book 2. Well, actually, she first arrives in book 1, at the end of book 1. So you get that right away. And it's some of the practical applications, which are tremendous. And I've had people tell me, like, I did that, I used that, I'm going to try this. So yeah, but I think these are books that are worth reading more than once. Definitely. I can't emphasize that enough. And when you go back into book 1 and you know all the story, it's like what I keep saying to myself is, oh, that's why he said that. Oh, that's what prepared her for this.
Wow.
Yes. And I mean, literally, I knew nothing of everything. There were some things I wrote that are a little bit controversial. And so it sort of stopped me a little. But some of it has to do with the difference in cultures. For instance, a woman was a woman instead of a child the minute she had her first moon cycle. In those days, most of them didn't live much beyond 40 years.
Right.
And there was a lot of, diseases. They needed people because it was a hands-on society. They
Right.
weren't sitting in their house like we are now having a nice day. I mean, so women were, women, if you had your first moon cycle when you were 12, you would be probably at least by 13 handfasted to somebody. And that whole cultural thing is discussed completely different. I mean, it's not something we can do in society today,
Right.
exactly. You have a
Right.
very strong community because you were allowed to leave after a year if it wasn't working out. And you might have a kid or two, and so who takes care? Well, in those days, your community, your circle was taking care of you, because you were part of something, not a little individual.
And it seems like we've lost our sense of community.
Well,
Um,
nuclear family and private space was more important, we thought.
yes, yeah, I certainly get that. Well, what has the process been like for you? How has this changed you in all, I guess, all areas of your life, certainly as a healer, but just in general, you almost being like the keeper of this knowledge.
Well, okay, so here's what I would say to that. I don't want to sound like that because I'm not that.
Uh-huh.
I am a vessel for it, yes. But when we think about the Neo-Druid movement, okay, which I am aware of now, pretty well aware of, and they will tell you they are reimagining, they're trying to bring it. And so, as she said, this is a memory reawakening in the crystals of your bones. So there are other people who have received. And in the back of the books, I have resources. If you're interested, these are people I would say, pay attention to. And one of them is a Welsh druid named from Anglesey, named Christopher Hughes. And he does a book called To the Cauldron Born, which is the story of Caradwyn. So they're using those goddess names. They're okay with doing that, and the Welsh have Welsh modern names for the festivals. I learned that the ones we know most are Irish, the
Right?
names for the festivals. But she brings through festivals for us in the book also. So I understand. I had been, when I moved up to the mountains here and I got out of South Florida and I had seasons back, I think
Mhm.
this was critical for me. And I did most of the writing here. I mean, I started in 2000. I was very busy with my healing practices and teaching and traveling to teach continuing ed and stuff. But she kept coming back, she kept coming back and giving me just a little bit more, but it was here. And going to Wales also, I was told by guidance that I had to go in 2013. I think that was when they downloaded. I didn't get to the Priestess Isle, but I got to see it. I was standing on a cliff by myself, and suddenly I was invoking. I mean, I'm doing this major invocation, and it was all elements, and I had no idea what her studies would be.
Wow.
And I went home and I took a stone. Do you know you have to ask. I don't know if people are aware of that, but you can't just pick up stones and take them. This is a nation. This is its own being nation. That's what the Native Americans teach you, the Rock Nation. And that's why they use them in the Sweat Lodge, because they have all this wisdom. They hold the ancient wisdom, like your crystals, stones do too. So I was able to take from that cliff. They said I could take a rock. And so I would hold it before I would write and book two, all the training. I would
Wow.
hold it for a while and put it down. And I got to see the blue stones. What happened to me was I grew into what you think I am. And I am that in a way. I have much more wisdom after writing these books than I had before. Absolutely. And my way of looking at things and seeing things is enhanced.
I understand that. I know with my own energy practice, it's like as I bring in different healing modalities, there's a period of time that's not even so much an integration of the new knowledge, but it's really an internalization of how to like switch it from head knowledge into like the intuitive knowledge that either I'm going to need or the person that I'm working with. So it's that whole process of it's almost like waking up and putting on your shoes only to discover they're too big. So you're like sloshing around in your mom's shoes for a while. Then one day you wake up and you put those same shoes on and they fit. Yeah.
It's a good analogy. And one of the things I want to say that you um, brought up for me in what you just said was in her training, it isn't just her meetings with a teacher. Knowledge comes when you have experience also. I mean, this is one of the things we are involved in with Western Mind. I can get everything I need just from hearing somebody tell me or reading about it. But even as an astrologer that started for me in 1975, if you have to grow. If you don't grow from that first teaching that you got, you never grew into a really good reader and someone who can really help with it, someone who can be a healer with the reading. That's different, you know. And so she goes on lots of journeys. There's lots of experiences. There are other characters and their stories and how she impacts with them that give her the ability to go through what she needs to go through. And you realize in book 3 that if she hadn't had all this without knowing what it was going to be, she could not have done it. You get it. But all the experience and she's on a fast track, but she's also returning, so it'll be said now and then, I'm just giving you what you already knew, which is also true for us.
I agree with that. And I also have become very comfortable with the idea that I may be showing up for one thing, but it actually is something completely different. So just kind of surrendering to what is, as opposed to my expectations of what I thought it was going to be. So that might be the definition of
Constantly,
maturity. I
constantly.
don't know.
Even that trip if I hadn't been studying with the Native Americans, which I still honor that, and I still do practices from that as well, um, that is who gave me the name of the woman in Glastonbury that I should contact.
So that was, in my thoughts, no coincidence.
One of the things that is said to her when she gets to the Priestess Isle, it could have been said any place, but it was said there, is that nothing happens without a purpose. And so you may not know the purpose in advance. And I'm still very close friends with the woman in Glastonbury, by the way. She's one of my advanced readers. I mean, she was a soul friend, you know.
Uh-huh.
So without that, how would they, well, if it was meant to be, they would find another way to get me there. And the they is, I mean, guidance. If you don't think you have guidance, you just haven't thought about it yet.
Or recognized what it is.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
that I didn't. I mean, I think when you get to be my age, which is 75, I will tell you, I look back and I see everything as a gift, even the things I didn't like, the things that I had to forgive, all of that. I see it as a gift because of the purpose that it served somehow.
I agree. And that's all for our development. As odd as that sounds, I know with some of the challenges that I've had, throughout my life, if I hadn't have had those challenges,
Yes.
I wouldn't have had the need to dig deeper to find whatever it was inside me that was either like incorrect thinking, incorrect behavior, or the just to
Pattern.
discover how courageous I actually am,
Yeah.
or how I like to champion people. So those are all pieces of my personality that may have stayed dormant had I not had those challenges. So I know exactly what you are talking about. Have you discovered with your readers from the first two books, and certainly now from the third, that they're looking for more? It's like, okay, we've
I'm
read
hearing
these.
that a lot.
What is the next step? What do I do?
Well, I get that question a lot. What are you doing next? Uh, I've only had so far, I mean, you can't imagine how uh, impacted you are about what I just did. With all the everything of 3 books coming out in a year. I mean, I didn't write them in the year, but getting them all. So it didn't leave me a lot of time to think about anything. But the only thing that has been slightly like a little bell goes off over here is there are, especially Lady Gwendolyn, and I noticed it because of rereading. There are certain things that happen on journeys with her, people that are met in different places and different situations that come up, and things, a couple of things that she says to help Anwen when she's on her path that speak to a backstory. We don't know her whole backstory, and we might want to. And I've heard from other people that sometimes what people do, and since she's a priestess, there would be more information coming in. Um, it, Sometimes people want to know some backstories.
Right.
I mean, Merlin has a backstory. I think, I will say, he's my favorite character. He is what people tell me is he's the epitome of the divine masculine.
Wow.
And he is consistently this. I mean, I'd like to meet him. If anybody knows where he is, could you please give me his number? Because, and so maybe. I also have had, that was not the only magical thing that ever happened in my life, the woman on the train. That was a pretty big one.
Right.
But I have thought about doing a memoir just to put it down because like I said, it was never, what you said about something bad happening so that you would discover something that you were strong in. I lived in England for a couple of years. I was engaged to an English medical student and it didn't work out. It was difficult. And I came back to the United States and I walked into an office and there was a chart wheel on my desk for an astrology chart. And the thing that I wanted to know, because this is, you have to want to know, was what happened? Can they see what happened, why it didn't work?
Yeah.
It was unhappy for me that it happened in a way, that it didn't work out. So yes, definitely there are, how did I come around and how did I even meet him? I mean, they're all like these sort of magical surprise moments, but I have to rest now. That I have been given in card readings and stuff, and people that I know saying to me, okay, when now you must rest and replenish the self.
I totally get that. That self-care is definitely, a part of our balance. So, yeah.
But I love talking about it. And so I'm grateful to you for interviewing me because I get very energized
Oh,
connecting to it.
it's been such a pleasure. When I spoke with you a couple of weeks ago, I felt like we were kindred sisters, and
Me too.
that we have definitely connected on a much deeper level. I too have a Welsh ancestry on my mom's side, so kind of plugging into that energy is already familiar to me. And with my own practice, I use a lot of the elements from Chinese medicine. So I can't wait to read the second book to see how it integrates with
Definitely.
with the Celtic, or would you consider that Celtic because it's Welsh, or is Welsh something different?
Well, there are Celts were very widespread. In fact, some evidence is that they migrated up, particularly Anwen, and that this was another thing. Well, that's a whole other story. Like how many things she told me that were validated afterwards. Because sometimes I had to research something because I said, I can't say this. I have to know if this is true,
Right, I
and
understand that.
she was describing her own coloring. And she's in a tribe in the southeast called the Silures, and Arthur was of that tribe, and they had the highest of the warriors, the Uther Pen dragons. All right, that is Welsh word, which isn't a name. It's not like he's Arthur Pendragon, like I'm Shellie Enteen. If you get that is a designation of your prowess, all right? And the Silures, except for him, were dark skin, sort of darkish skin and dark hair. And she would have had dark eyes, but she has green eyes, and that's like a whole issue. The green eyes of the psychic priestess energies,
Oh, wow.
indicators. So I find out that, they came up from the Iberian Peninsula, a lot of them. There's a lot of Celtic information about Portugal and northern Spain. And so in other words, Wales, however, has a designation based on the inundation, the great inundation that left a lot of the land, as we now know, above water. But there was other land before that inundation. There was one. And they know that because they're finding the cities that were down there, you know.
Wow.
So coming from areas that were going to be underwater, big priest energy came to Snowdonia. The highest peak is Mount Snowdon. That isn't the name in Welsh. But so they came down, and a lot of the things, Ireland has its own quality, but the word Avalon, let's say, we think of as Glastonbury is in England, and it's Avalon. It comes from a Welsh word, Afalon, and he was in mythology as the keeper of the apple. Aphel is Welsh for apple. So a lot of things come from the Welsh that we don't know came from the Welsh. The name Merlin, I kept in the writing that we know, but it's Myrdddin. And you would go, huh? If you looked at it. So I didn't want to do that to you. So Merlin is how it's pronounced. And Merlin is the Welsh. The Welsh is the Druids. Okay. Ireland has the goddesses, and I would call it Celtic, and they have Bridget.
Right, right, yes.
That is not a Welsh. I mean, so within the Celtic realms, of which there were many, Wales has its own, but that they left no information. And the reason that everybody tries to claim Arthur, you know, I mean, it's like, I mean, I bought a book like this. I had to pay all this money to read all the archaeological. Scotland claims him, you know, Brittany claims him, you know, it's everybody wants Arthur, you know.
Right.
Well, there's a reason for that, but it's folklore, it's folk tales of when he might have set foot there. Cornwall claims him big time. And when you read the books, you'll understand why, you know. But he even his name and everything about the Uther Pendragons, and that's all Welsh. And the Prince of Wales, think about that. Why does the royal family still have a Prince of Wales? Wales? Why? Because they actually believe, Victorians believed it, the Tudors, and, you know, a lot of the royal families claimed lineage from Arthur.
Wow.
Now, he was real, but he was just, you know, he gets distorted as the time goes on. Merlin was real, and he gets distorted as the time goes on. The priestesses were real, and they got distorted as the time went on. So it's an interesting question, what you say, you know, and all I can say is I had to add an addendum to book 3 of research I did, because there are some things that are said in book 3 that you'll go, huh? And one of those pieces is about the Prince of Wales. And I'm giving that to you now. King Charles III and his son, William, Prince of Wales, all have the name Arthur in the list of their names.
Oh, that is beautiful.
Charles, Philip, Arthur, George. It's, you know, they know
So
that there
it's
was
like the best kept secret on earth.
but they don't know what he was, really. And that's what she's trying to tell us. It's so much, you can't tell it like this because of the restrictions of the church that were laid down. And the monks were the ones that wrote the tale. The one that we know, Arthur, Guinevere, Lancelot, the triangle, that one has the women who are either adulteresses or evil priestesses in
Right.
it. Our favorite one, Lancelot, Guinevere. That was written, I think it's 13th century, for Eleanor of Aquitaine by Cistercian monks because of a new courtly romance fad that she liked. Just like today, there were, so Arthur's in the late 400s, early 500s. We're now in the 1200s, and Cistercian monks are telling the story. It wasn't meant to be a history. It was meant to be entertainment.
So, and I can totally see how that it gets like misunderstood over time between the two. That's amazing. Well, Shellie, it looks like we are
Yeah.
come to our time. Thank you so much. I would like
Thank
to
you.
reserve a spot to interview you again as the as your book unfolds. I am just so intrigued with so many things. And I know when I start reading your books that I'm going to have questions.
I was thinking if somebody suggested to me that I do a book club
Oh, I love that.
and that I am there and you're reading the book, and it depends on how you want to go chapter by chapter, or you want to go segment by segment in each book. And I find that when I'm asked a question about a technique or a practice, I may not know the answer and I will receive something.
Oh, that is very cool. And I use that also in my practice. And I think the like the whole thing that we were talking about in the realms of just simply healing is to stay curious.
Yes.
Because I know when I come from a place of curiosity, it's like, well, that's weird. Why on earth? It unfolds into something also, and once again, completely different. So I love the part where I don't know the answer. So let's see what it is.
We're human mind. Human minds may never probably know everything there is to know.
And I don't think we're meant to, quite
Okay.
honestly, until we're on, until we pass into the next realm of energy, whatever that may be. So how can we get a hold of you, Shellie, so we can say, yes, sign me up for your book club?
Well, a good idea is to go to my website, which is my
Okay.
name, ShellieEnteen.com. And if you're interested in that, I would sign up. It's free, the author updates. So if something gets put together, and maybe you and I can put it together,
Okay, cool.
I will be, letting everyone know through that. And I have a Facebook page that's Shellie Enteen author also, but I also have my own page. So I guess that would be the ways, I would imagine.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let me unhide myself here, just so we can wrap it up. There we go. Thank you so much for all of your time today. I so appreciate everything that you had to share with us. And my curiosity has really been like shot through the roof. And we were talking initially because I did read The Mists of Avalon, and I always thought that the place that they lived was Wales. And it's like I don't know where that came from, but um that was just the sense that I was like, well, it's there, it's in Wales, and I don't know anything about Wales. So yeah, yeah, that was That was a great
For your
aha moment.
listeners, can I just say something for your listeners' benefit?
Yes.
There are circles of nine, more than one circle of nine. A circle of nine healing priestesses. So if you are attached to Glastonbury, you will find out in book one, they will visit a circle of nine on the tour.
So say that again.
Okay, well, I think the reason you thought Mists of Avalon was in Wales was because you were responding and reacting to your Welsh lineage.
Got
Okay.
it. Okay.
But what actually happened was wherever there was a healing well or some other special portal or something like that, you would find that the nine priestesses would be there because they would be training, serving a community. So
Okay.
if you read Mists of Avalon and you want to keep it in Glastonbury, there was a circle of nine there. They had to leave sooner because of the Anglo-Saxons, and they were starting to make headway in the religion sooner.
Right.
Wales was pretty, it was held longer.
Okay. All right. That
So
makes sense.
yeah, just because some
Okay.
people will go, I don't, and you don't have to because they were all over the place.
So would you also find, and then we'll wrap up with this question, Shellie, would you find that as people are reading your books, it's like, do they become or do they find other people that are a part of a circle of nine?
Hmm. I don't really, you mean in their own lives?
Yeah, where all of a sudden
Hmm.
these communities come together and
That's very interesting
yeah,
because my life has done that. Yes. I have a lot of priestesses around me in my life now that I never had before in my friendships in other locations and before I wrote the book and stuff. You're
so
right. You just gave me a piece that I
yeah,
didn't
so
see
that might
myself.
be a clue that when you awaken, it's like the teachers show up, which I've always known. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a woman in North Carolina who has the books on her list for her priestess training.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Cool.
So
All right. Well,
thank you so
thank you
much.
so
So
much,
happy to be
Shellie.
with you.
And the best of luck to your
Thank you.
launch.
And
And
Amazon is where you find the books, by the way.
okay.
And if you all you have to do is Google Revealing the Druid Legacy,
Okay,
because
got it.
that's the name of the series. And then the titles of the book will come up. They will show you the last priestess first. Amazon does that.
Okay. And
That's book one.
and that's book one. Okay. I'm making notes to myself here. Well, once again, thank you very much. I'm Liz Naughton, and this is Soulful Conversations with Shellie Enteen. I just thank you
You.
so much.
Thank
And
you.
namaste.